Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is the most ambitious tutorial I ever done on this channel, which is the Vegas Pro full guide beginner tutorial. And I cover the most aspect for beginners when using Vegas Pro software. So I don't want to waste your time much of me just talking about the program. However, I want to cover a bit of the history of Vegas software. So Vegas was created back in 1999 by a company called Sonic Foundry. It was initially an audio editing program. It was not meant to edit video. But the ability to edit video was added a year later in 2000, and then moving along in 2003, Sony bought the entire program from Sonic Foundry. And from that moment, Sony rebranded the Vegas software to its most iconic name, which is the Sony Vegas Pro software. And Sony Vegas Pro 13 was the last version of Sony Vegas under Sony itself, before they decided to sell the entire creative software to Magic's company, which is Vegas' new parent company. And Magic's decided to rebrand the Vegas software to Vegas Pro without any of Magic's parent company inside. So you only call the program by Vegas Pro, not Sony Vegas, and not Magic's Vegas Pro. So I hope with this quick history, you guys can from now on start calling the software its a proper name, which is Vegas Pro, not Sony Vegas or Magic Vegas. So without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. Before you learn how to edit with Vegas Pro, it is important for you to get familiar with the user interface. So I'll break it down into 8 parts. The first one here is the window docking area, which holds your project media, Explorer, transitions, video effects, media generator, and project notes. Next, we have the preview window, which you will see all of edits through these small windows here. Then we have the timeline workspace, where you do your edits in this workspace area. Then we have the timer display, which display the time code. Next, we have the scrub controls and status bar, which you can use to fast forward or play in back time in the timeline or show any progressions in Vegas Pro. Then we have the master toolbars, where you can save a project, create a new project, and so on. And then we have the timeline toolbars, which is sets of tools where you can use to do your edits in the timeline workspace. And finally, we have the master track, where you do your mixing and mastering in this track. So now I'm going to show you guys the basic shortcuts in Vegas Pro. To play a media in Vegas Pro, just simply press spacebar. To stop, press spacebar again. To pause, press enter instead. You can use your arrow key on your keyboard to move the playhead 1 frame to the left or 1 frame to the right. Press S on your keyboard to make a split onto your media. To cut the media, press Ctrl X or simply press delete key to delete the unwanted media in the timeline. Hold Ctrl and drag the media to make a quick copy inside the timeline workspace. To unlink the media, just simply press U on your keyboard. You can group bunch of media in the timeline workspace just by pressing G on your keyboard. You can perform a fast cut in Vegas Pro just by pressing Alt open bracket to fast cut the left portion, or Alt close bracket to fast cut the right portion of the media. User can quickly access to the fast cut via the timeline toolbars as well. Press J to move the playhead backwards, press K to pause, and press L to move the playhead forward. If you spam J or L key, you will increase the playhead speed in the timeline. You can undo the edits by pressing Ctrl plus Z, or redo the edit by pressing Ctrl plus Y. You can access the undo or redo button via the master toolbars. You can enable auto ripple in Vegas Pro by pressing Ctrl plus L. You can change the ripple mode, enable it or disable it from the timeline toolbars. You can add a marker in the timeline by pressing M on your keyboard. Press B on your keyboard to show or hide the audio bus track in the timeline. By pressing Ctrl plus Shift and B, you can show or hide a video bus track in the timeline. You can move the playhead between media event edge by pressing open bracket or close bracket on your keyboard. Press Z on your keyboard to mute the selected track. You can solo the track that you have selected by pressing X on your keyboard. I'm going to share with you guys how I manage my file when editing with Vegas Pro. So what I usually do is create a master folder, and inside the master folder I'll create another 2 subfolders. The first folder I'll name it as artwork, and the second one will be a project folder. So in the artwork folder, this is where I keep all of my videos, photos, music, everything organized inside the artwork folder. While the project folder, this is where I keep my main veg file inside. So that's how I manage my file when working with Vegas Pro. So right under Project Media tab, you can start importing all of your footage and assets by pressing Import Media buttons on the top left corner. So I'm going to import all of the footage, the video assets, the music and SFX, whatever that I think I'm going to work with by going through the master file that we have just created earlier. So I'm just going to import all of that here into Vegas Pro. So this is where all of your medias will be stored inside Vegas Pro, and you can organize all of them by creating a custom bins here in the Project Media tab. So just right click on the custom bins, create another folder, and keep your media organized. So maybe the first folder you can label as video, the second one music, and another one SFX and stuff like that. So you can basically keep things organized from your master file all the way inside to Vegas Pro Project Media. So keep your workflow organized so that you won't get lost when you are editing with Vegas Pro. So instead of using Project Media to import all of the medias into Vegas Pro, I'm going to use the Explorer tab instead. And the Explorer tab will reflect your computer system. So I'm just going to basically find the master file that we have created beforehand, and it will show up here in the Explorer tab. And all of the subfolders that I've created to keep my things organized will be reflected here in the Explorer. So it will keep things much more organized and neat, and I can just drag and drop it here into Vegas Pro Timeline. So every single time you drag and drop the media into Vegas Pro Timeline, it will automatically import it or show up inside the Project Media pools. So I personally use the Explorer tab more compared to Project Media. This is the list of media that can be imported into Vegas Pro. And from my own personal experience, the video codec that Vegas Pro very friendly is H.264, Sony XA-VCS, and MXF. And it is worth mentioning that Vegas Pro do support and import Photoshop PSD files. So if you do any edits with Photoshop, you can directly import the project file into Vegas Pro. So any updates that you've done in Photoshop will be reflected inside Vegas Pro Timeline. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that whenever you import footages into Vegas Pro, Vegas will automatically create another file called SFK. And the same goes to when you are creating a proxies for your 4K video. For example, here I'm creating a proxies for my 4K video clip. While Vegas is building the proxies, Vegas is actually creating another file called SFVP. And that SFVP file is actually the proxies file. So do not delete either both SFK and SFVP file, otherwise Vegas Pro will show you an error saying some footage is missing, or you are basically deleting the proxies files. Alright, so since we already import all of our media into Vegas Pro, let's save this project real quick. To save the project, just go to the master toolbar and press the save icon, and this save window will pop out. So I'm just going to save this project inside our master file here, and I already created a folder called project file, and this is where I'm going to save the master file. So I'm just going to give it a name real quick, maybe call it edit, and press save. After saving the project file, we're now going to set up our project properties. To set up the project properties, you just click the gear icon above the preview window, and Vegas will prompt you with the project properties window dialog here. There's a few ways to access the project properties menu. You can click the gear icon above the preview window, or the gear icon at the master toolbars, or go to File and Properties. So there's few ways for you to access the project property settings inside Vegas Pro. I'm going to explain to you guys what each settings here really means. The first one here, we got the template, and you can pick any template you want to. Or you can make a custom template and press the save icon here to save a template, or delete any template that you have made. Or if you're unsure, you can match your project settings based on the media that you have imported into Vegas Pro. The width and the height is basically your video pixels resolutions. So since we're just working with full HD content here, I'm gonna output my video in full HD formats. So the width and the height gonna be 1920 by 1080. The field order here has something to do with broadcast. Again, 99%, most of you guys just gonna upload your content online. You want to pick the progressive scan instead. If you're doing video for broadcasts, for TV for example, you might want to pick either of these two settings here depending on the requirement from the TV stations. But again, we're not going to do for TV stuff, and I'm just going to pick the progressive scan instead. The pixel aspect ratios is basically the ratio of your video, but again, 99% most of you guys going to upload your video online, just pick square pixel aspect ratio. Vegas allows you to export your video in certain rotations, from clockwise, counterclockwise, even inverted if you wish to. It's really nice to have this functionality here in the Vegas Pro. Pick a frame rate that's suitable for your projects, which in this case, I'm going to use 25 frame, which is PAL format. I highly recommend to pick a frame rate based on your region settings, which in this case, my country, Malaysia, is adapting the European standards, which is PAL format. So if you're living in America or Japan, some country adapt NTSC format, which is 29.9 frames per second. But in this case, I'm just gonna deliver my content in 25 frames. So I'm just gonna pick 25 frames, which is PAL format. You can enable HDR mode here in Vegas Pro, which is HDR10 or HLG. As long as you own a HDR monitor and a HDR content, you should be able to deliver your video in HDR settings. But in this case, we're not working with any HDR content, so I'm just going to leave it off. You can enable 360 video output if you're working with 360 video, which is nice that Vegas support 360 video editing here in the software. You can enable stereoscopic 3D mode here in Vegas Pro, which create an illusion where the video is popping out from your monitor or from your televisions. It's pretty cool that Vegas have these functions. But in this case, we're just going to switch it off because we are not working with any 3D stuff with our media. There's 4 types of pixel format here in Vegas Pro that you can choose from. The first one here is the video levels, which is 8-bit. Next one here is 8-bit full range. The third one here is the 32-bit floating points video levels, and the fourth one is the same thing but in full range. I highly recommend pick the 8-bit full range if you're just making a content for online platform. And the advantage of using the 8-bit full range over the video levels is that whatever you see on the preview window will look exactly the same when you export the video. If you pick the full range of 32-bit floating point, you will unlock ACES. ACES stands for Academy Color Encoding System. And for your information, there's only 3 NLE out there support ACES. First is DaVinci Resolve, second is Vegas Pro, and third is Avid Media Composer. Premiere Pro and Final Cut does not support ACES, so it's pretty nice that Vegas Pro do support ACES workspace in the software. So in this case, we are not intended to work in ACES color space, so I'm just gonna go back to 8-bit full range. There's 4 types of rendering quality that you can pick, and of course you always want the best quality if you want to export your video at the highest resolution possible. In the motion type blur, I always leave it as it is, which is Gaussian. The interlace method, I leave it to none. The resample mode, you always want to leave it to be disabled. And that's for the video tab. And if you go to the audio tab, you can enable 5.1 surround if you want to, if you own a 5.1 surround speakers. but in this case we are not, so I'm just going to leave it to stereos. The sample rate, I'm just going to leave it at 48,000 Hertz. That's pretty much standard everywhere when you're doing editing. And the bit depth, I'm going to leave it as it is, which is 16. And of course, you always want the best resample and stretch quality for your audio. For the ruler, it's pretty much ruler in your timeline, and I don't really touch it. And as far as I'm using Vegas Pro, I never go through the summary and audio CD tab. Once you're happy with the settings here, press apply and hit OK. And we are pretty much ready to go for our offline editing with Vegas Pro. Since we already set up the project properties, let's drag and drop the video into the timeline workspace. So I'm going to select this video here and drag it into the timeline. And Vegas will prompt you with this message saying if you would like to match the project properties based on the media. Since we already set up the project properties beforehand, I'm going to click no. And here's the video. Another tip is that if you right click instead of left click on the media, for example this video here, and drag and drop it into the timeline, the small window here will pop out. Let's say if you want to import only the video into the timeline, you press video only, and if you want the entire line of the video, you press add video across time. So you'll only drag the video into the timeline without the audio. So that's really handy if you want to just import the video or audio into the timeline. Alright, so we already import few clips into the timeline, and I feel I dislike the way Vegas user interface currently look like. And you can customize the interface. So let's just say the preview window is kind of small. You can just drag it to make it bigger so that you can see the preview window better. And you can click this hamburger icon here to reveal more buttons. And I like the buttons to, place in front of me. So I'm gonna click the hamburger icon here, edit the visible button sets, and I like everything to be shown in front of me. And same goes to the track layer here. I'm gonna click here, the hamburger icon, edit the visible button, show alls, so that I can quickly click the buttons here without going to the hamburger icon here. And the same goes to the audio track, show all, so that I can quickly access to these buttons here. Same goes to the media here. Click the hamburger icon, edit the visible button sets, and for the media in the timeline, I would like to just show the motion tracking, color grading, and selective pace event attributes, so that I can quickly access to my color grading panel and quickly exit from there, or quickly apply motion tracking if I want to. That's really nice. And let's just say this is your preference workspace or user interface of Vegas Pro. You can save it. To save the current workspace, you go to View, Window Layout, and Save Layout As. You can give it a name and save it on the empty slots here. Since I already have mine, I'm just going to go to my custom layout that I've made, and it'll pop out my preferred layout that I've customized beforehand. So let's start editing with Vegas Pro. Before I start editing, I'm just going to briefly explain to you guys how Vegas Pro timeline workspace really work and behave. So if you click anywhere in the timeline, the playhead will instantaneously go there. And I prefer this method even more because most software out there force you to click on the top of the timeline. So let's just say you have a stacking layers from top to bottom and you got media on the bottom here. If you click on the top of the timeline, you can't really tell if the playhead gonna end up where you want it to be, so it won't give you an accurate results. So by having an option to click anywhere, you can feel very confident that the playhead gonna be end up where you want it to be, so you can do your edits much more faster and much more precise. And you can just click anywhere and zoom in by using a mouse wheel. So let's just drag all of this media here into the timeline, and we have a a lengthy timeline here. So let's just say you want to do your edits over here, just click at this part of the timeline and just use your mouse wheel to zoom in, and you can travel from one point to another in your timeline quickly, which is much more faster. See how quickly I'm going from one point to another in the timeline. Another cool thing about Vegas is that if you middle click your mouse wheel, you can just have these functions here where you can, slide from left to right as well from top to bottom. The reason why I can slide top to bottom because I only have 4 tracks. If I have more tracks stacking from top to bottom, I can just slide up and down here just by simply middle click my mouse wheels. So that's how Vegas Pro Timeline works and behave. I'm gonna start piecing the video together in the timeline using the shortcut keys inside Vegas Pro. This is what we call offline editing process, where we're making the rough cut for us to evaluate the story or the flow of the content we create. So I already done piecing the clip together and I wanted to refine more of the cutting points. There's few ways for you to adjust or enhance the cuts in Vegas Pro. Let's start off with the first clip. I dislike the camera shakes in this footage, but I want to retain the cut points. What I can do is click on the media. While holding Alt on my keyboard, I can shift the media in and out point by dragging my mouse left or right. This is what we call slip edit. It is super handy when you want to quickly shift the media portion without touching the cutting points. Next one is shifting the cutting point between clips. You can enable expand edit mode in Vegas by right click on the track and select expand track layer. It will convert the single track layer into double track layer. All you have to do now is click the gap between the cuts to shift the cutting point. You can access the same expand edit mode by double click at the edge of the media. Same goes when you want to exit from it. If you enter expand edit mode by double clicking, you will get double preview window. So you can see the out point for the first media and in point for the next media. However, accessing expand edit mode by double clicking on the edge of the media might not work or change in the future Vegas Pro software. This is due to a common problem where a lot of users accidentally enable expand edit mode when they're doing editing. I'm going to show you guys how to control the video opacity here in Vegas Pro. The first one is directly on the media itself. So let's say I want to control or reduce the opacity for this particular clip here. All I have to do is just select and highlight the video and go to the middle of the video clip here. You can see that there's a gizmo here and it will pop out opacity, and just drag it down, and that control the opacity for this clip. Okay, if you bring it all the way down, it means pure transparent 0%, and you go all the way up, you're basically revealing the video itself. Okay, same goes for this one here. For example, this clip, I can just tone down the opacity and make it a bit transparent. The second one is using the video track slider. Okay, if I move it down, it will also make the video transparent, but the video track affect everything in the timeline here. So whatever clip sits in this particular track will get the same effect. So if you want to affect a specific video clip, just control on the media itself, and if you want to affect everything, you control on the video track slider. So that's how you control opacity in Vegas Pro. Let's rescale and tweak the clip horizon. There's a few ways of doing this in Vegas Pro. Let's start off with the appropriate way of transforming the clip using the pan and crop. You can click this icon to get into pan and crop window for the selected media. You will do all of the basic transformation on this panel, including masking. I will get into masking in just a bit. The pan and crop sits in the first chain of the video event effects by default. You can see the pan and crop have a set of tools sitting on the left window, a preview window in the center, and a keyframe timeline at the bottom. The gear icon at the top show or hide the properties panel beside it. Then we have the normal edit tool. This is the zoom edit tool to zoom in or out in the preview. A snapping tool for you to make fine adjustment. Lock aspect ratio is to lock the pan and crop transforming ratio. Size about center for you to scale from the center. Move freely to move around the pan and crop. You can toggle it between moving in X-axis or Y-axis, or move it freely in the preview. There's few pre-built presets in pan and crop for you to emulate aspect ratio. You can create your own custom preset if you wish to. And finally, we have a keyframe timeline at the bottom for the pan and crop positions, as well as masking. You can just simply grab the corner of the pan and crop to make a transformation. You can also rotate and move it around directly on the pan and crop preview. You can right click and press restore to reset the pan and crop to media default properties. You can disable scale about center and adjust the height transformation to emulate black bar. You can fine-tune the adjustment by filling in a certain pixel value via the properties panel. You can save the transformation that you have made by clicking the save icon, and it will save inside the presets menu. If you pay attention at the center of the pan and crop preview, you will see an anchor point. All of the transformation you will make will transform based on the anchor point positions. So if I shift it over here and rotate the pan and crop, you can see how it rotates or scale from the anchor point. So let's switch the video horizon a bit by adjusting the pan and crop. So let's talk about masking. Masking sits in the same properties as pan and crop. To get into masking mode, click the mask text right below the position keyframe timeline. It will automatically convert the left panel into masking mode, which displays appropriate tools for masking. This time, it will display these 5 masking tools. The first one is the anchor creation tool, or in other words, the pen tool. Then we have anchor delete tool. Then we have a split tangent tool to modify the mask tangent. And finally, we have 2 basic mask shapes, which is square and oval shapes. The properties panel also is updated to mask settings as well. With a pen tool selected, you can click anywhere in the preview window here to drop the first masking point and start making the mask around the subject or thing you want to trace. Any curvature on the subject, you can click and drag your mouse to shape the mask curve. And you can close the mask selection by clicking back to the first point of the masking. You can invert the mask here if you wish to, and also enable feathering if you want to. For the keyframe timeline, both position and mask keyframe behave the same. Any adjustment you make between the timeline will automatically add a keyframe. If you strictly want to adjust your clip, fix via the first keyframe. If you want to animate the clip, you can add a keyframes and animate it from time to time. You can press this button to add or delete the keyframes or move between keyframes. You can enable sync cursor to sync the pan and crop and mask timeline with the master timeline. The next method of adjusting clip is using track motion. You can enter track motion panel by clicking this icon on the video track layer. It has sort of similar interface like pan and crop. The difference between this pan and crop and track motion is that track motion will affect the entire video transformation that's sitting in the same track. Track motion is purely for transforming the video. You have the properties menu on the left side of the panel, a keyframe timeline at the bottom, and a gizmo in the center. All of the controls here are pretty similar to pan and crop. What makes track motion layer powerful is the 3D capabilities. You can convert it into 3D Source Alpha, which update the properties panel and gizmo into 3D editor. You will see each side of the 3D face representing front, side, top, as well 3D perspective view. Simply click and hold the gizmo and move your mouse around to shift the perspective of the video. Even in 3D mode, the keyframe timeline still holds a single keyframes to make the editing experience much more easy, simplified, and faster. The final way of transforming your video is using picture-in-picture effects. You can go to Video Effects tab via docking area and search for an effect called Picture-in-Picture. Simply drag and drop the effects into the video you want to adjust in the timeline. It works very similar to pan and crop and track motion, but in effects level. You can also change it into freeform to have 3D perspective edit. Let's do some basic slow motion to our edit. I have few clips that were shot in higher frame rate for me to slow motion the clips in Vegas. There's 2 ways slowing down a video clip in Vegas Pro. First is using stretch tool, and second using velocity. Let's start off with stretch tool. Go to the edge of the video you want to slow down. If you're unsure of the video frame rate, you can right click into the video and click properties to see the basic metadata of the selected clip. Since this clip sits right between cuts, you want to trim in a bit for us to stretch the video. Once done, hold Ctrl on your keyboard and you can see the mouse cursor will display stretch icon. Simply drag the edge of the video to start stretching the video clip. The more you pull, the more slow-mo our video gonna look like. You can speed up the clip as well instead of slowing it down by squishing it in instead of stretching it out. To reset the clip into its original state, try pull or stretch till the zigzag line on the media is gone, or you can right click, click properties, and you will see a playback rate value in the panel. Just simply fill in a value of 1 to reset the clip. You can also fill in a value over here to slow or speed up the clip. It's the same thing as stretching or squishing the video, or you can just press conform to project frame rate to quickly slow down the video to its max value based on the project settings. I would say this is a shortcut way to slow down a video. The next method is using velocity. This is my favorite way of slowing down a clip, as you can change the video clip speed over time, in other words speed ramp. To enable velocity, just right click on the video you want to animate the speed, insert and click velocity. You can see a fine green line on the media. The velocity acts very similar to a keyframe timeline in pan and crop. The default value will be 100% for a normal speed. Anything below 100% will be slowed down. Anything above 100% value will be speed up. You can right click at the points here to change the value by selecting the preset value, or you can manually fill in a certain value you wanted, or just simply move the points up to speed up and down to slow it. You can click anywhere in the green line to add a point, which acts very similar like a keyframe. The next point, you can change the value to whatever number you want. As you can see, the line between point 1 and point 2 will be shaped based on the value we fill between these 2 points. Whatever points on the highest position means it will speed up. The clip points sitting at the bottom will be slowed down. You can also change the line graph between points to emulate the speed effects between points. Simply right click and choose the mode between slow, smooth, sharp, fast, etc. to get certain graph shapes. Finally, you can do quick freeze frame with velocity. Simply move the playhead to the frames you want it to freeze and right click on the video, insert freeze frame at the cursor to freeze the video. Let's adjust the music volume so it does not peak to 0 decibel threshold. There is a few ways adjusting volume in Vegas Pro. The first one is to directly adjust from the media by dragging this gizmo over here. The audio waveform will change as well to reflect how loud or dim the volume is. The next one is using volume slider. It acts very similar to track motion. Since the slider controls the audio volume, means whatever audio media sits in that track will get affected with the same settings. You can also right click on the audio track and insert volume envelope. It's the same thing as volume slider but in envelope mode, which is similar to video velocity. It's the same concept. If the volume is -0 decibel means the audio will be toned down, and if the volume is +0 decibel means the audio will be increased. You can add a point to animate the volume loudness over time. Last one is using volume effects. Simply press the effects icon on your audio media and add an effect called volume. It has a simple slider which controls audio loudness. Right, so now I'm going to show you guys how to add a text here in Vegas Pro. To add a text, just go to Media Generator, click Titles and Text, and you just pick any text preset that you want over here. So let's say I pick the default one, just click drag and drop it over your timeline. It will automatically create a new video track above your media, and you can straight away see the sample text will be displayed onto the preview, as well a video media generators window will pops out. Alright, so you do all of the text adjustment and customization of the text over this panel here. Okay, and instead of going to media generators and click titles and text, what you can do is just add a text directly on the track. For example, I want a text to be appear on this frame. Instead of going to media generators and click all those buttons here, what I can do is just right click and insert text media, and it will automatically add a text media onto my layer over here. All right, make sure you right click on an empty video track. So to adjust the text, you just click this button here to load up the video media generators window here. All right, so you do all of your text and stuff over here. So let's say I want to write hello. I just type in hello and it will reflect back here into onto the preview window. And of course you can change the font by make sure you highlight the text and select the font that you want to use, and you can just use your mouse scroll wheel to scroll through the fonts that you have in your computer. All right, and of course you can change the font sizing by clicking these the font size number here, and of course you can manually fill in a certain numbers if you wish to, and you can make it bold or italic depending on the font itself if it's available. and customize the alignment from left, center, and on the right. All right. And of course, you can change the text color. Click on this text color over here and have a different type of color variation if you wish to. And again, you can have a different text, font in this one panel. So let's say I want the Vegas to be a different font. I can select a different font and have a different sizing. However, for the color, it will affect everything inside this text box over here. So you can't have a specific color on a specific text in this panel. Now for the animations, you pretty much stock whatever preset they have. So let's say title 2, and it will just play the animation from the beginning. You can customize the blur and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty much a preset that pre-made for you, right? And then you can adjust the scale of the text and also move the location of the text, and it will reflect here onto the preview window. Now instead of adjusting the scale and the locations from this panel here, you can directly adjust it on the preview window, which is much more faster in my opinion. And then we have the advanced tab, which you can change the tracking of the text, make it wider and such. Okay, and then add a background if you wish to, and just decrease the opacity. And then you can also add an outline over here and change the outline color, and also add a shadows of the text by enabling the shadows, adjust the offset as well as shadow blur. Okay, and you do all of the customization on this panel. Now let's say if you want to rotate the text, you have to use the Vegas pan and crop. Okay, so it will reflect onto the preview window. So this is like the basic adjustment for the text. Okay, so this is how you add text in Vegas Pro. So now I'm going to show you guys how to add transitions in Vegas Pro. The most common used transition is crossfade, fade in, and fade out transitions. And to do that, just simply go to the edge of your media and just drag at the edge, and you will see this line appear. This indicates the fade in transitions. You can see from black, it will fade in into the video itself, and it worked the same on the other side of the media. And you can right click and choose different types of curvature of the fade out and fade in. And it does not only work on the video, it does work on the audio as well. And this is far quicker than going to transitions tab and search for the cross transitions and all that kind of stuff and drag and drop it into your media, which most other NLE use that kind of method. And to crossfade between video, all you have to do is just simply merge them together, and it'll just crossfade. And you can right click on the transitions and choose different type of crossfade, and make sure you enable crossfade here on the timeline toolbar. If you not enable that, it will just not do anything when you merge these two clips. So if I enable that, it will just automatically add a transitions between these cuts, which is great. Now let's say I want a crossfade between here, but I still want a fancy transitions instead of this cross dissolve. What I can do is just go to transitions, tap, and then maybe I want a trestle dissolve transition, and I just click, drag and drop onto the crossfade over here, and it automatically add the transitions. Pretty cool. And same thing to fade in and fade out. Maybe this time I'm gonna use the barn door, and it will automatically add the transitions. There is no transitions for your audio because it's just a simple fade in and fade out volume. All right, and let's say I want the volume to dim down at this portion. I'll just dim this down and just crossfade between these two audio. Make sure it doesn't move, so we'll just slow down at this part. Okay, alright, so let's say you want to remove the fancy transition that you have added onto your video. You can just simply remove it like so. Or maybe you want to make it to original state, which is fade in transition. Just simply click the transition property itself. Just click on it and this panel will load up. And just click this remove selected plugin and it will remove the transition itself from the media, and it will just revert back to the original fade in or fade out transition. And again, to remove it, just basically put it away like so. And that's how you remove transitions here in Vegas Pro. What I'm doing now is making more fine-tuned adjustment or enhancement onto my offline edit before we get into online editing phase, which involve with effects, color, and so on. You can see I use all of the basic tools and technique that I've just explained previously on how to make speed ramp, media transformation, edit tags, and so on. You can see how I can quickly do my edits in Vegas Timeline with breeze. So now we're in online editing phase. Online editing is the final editing phase, which editor will do the cosmetic adjustment onto the video, like adding effects, mixing the audio, color correct, color grading on the video, and so on. Online editing focuses more on technicality of the edits, while offline is more on the story flow. So let's get started by adding an effects to our video. To add an effects, simply click the video effects tab and choose any plugins that you want to use onto your video. For an example, I want this video to have a TV look. What I can do is scroll or simply search the plugins in the search box. The plugin is called TV Simulator. Just like generated media, Vegas have pre-made plugin presets that you can choose. You can also customize and save the presets, which I'll get into it in just a bit. So let's add the TV look preset by just clicking the effects and drag and drop to the video. Once you add, the video event effects panel will load up, and depending on the plugin itself, you may or may not see the effects straight away on your preview window. The event effects window is the panel where we customize and organize the plugin that we add onto the video. It's the same panel shared with the pan and crop. You can see pan and crop chain sits on the very first chain, and the second chain is our TV Simulator plugin. You can customize the effects visuals by changing its properties, like the slider over here. Let's add another effects beside TV Simulator. This time I want to add median effects. You can see it straight away give me this interesting glitchy look onto the video. You can play with the properties of the effects to customize the looks. If you pay attention, you can see right after adding the second effects, the median plugin sits right after TV Simulator. This means every time you add an effects, it will act like a layer in the timeline. Left side of the chain will be the bottom layer or original source, and right side of the chain will be the top layer or final source. You can swap the plugin positions just by sliding it around to modify the look. If I have a TV Simulator plugin first, then median plugin, you can see I get this kind of look. If I swap the position between these two effects, it will give me this new look. So it is very important to plan out your edits so you can visualize how the effects will look like in the preview window. Besides adding effects to our video, you can also animate them by keyframing the properties. Just like in pan and crop or track motion, you can animate each individual properties of the plugin depending on the plugin itself. To keyframe the effects or plugins, simply click the stopwatch button or the animate button. You can tell that particular properties of the plugins can be keyframed if you see those two icons. After clicking those buttons, it will automatically add a keyframe timeline just right below the effects gizmo in video event effects panel. You can have stacking keyframe layer if you decide to keyframe more stuff in the plugin itself. So this will unlock more endless possibilities on how you want to animate the effects to support your editing motive. Let's say you may use the same effects again in the future with the same exact tweaking. You can save it as a preset. What you can do is simply give it a name and press save icon, and you are done. So next time when you go to video effects tab, the saved preset shall appear inside the panel. You can uncheck the plugin to disable the effects so you can quickly see the visuals gonna look like before and after adding these plugins. And you can remove the plugin by just clicking this icon here. To add back the effects, just go to video effects tab or click this icon, which will load up a plugin chooser panel, which is the same thing as going through video effects tab. It's just a different way of adding effects. To get back to the media event effects panel, just click this effects icon on your media. It will load up the panel with the plugin that you have added on this particular video. In Vegas Pro, you can apply the plugins in 4 level. The one that I've just demonstrated is on video event effects level. So this means you can affect certain level part of the entire timeline and media. The most used one is video event effects level, which means you apply the plugins onto the media in the timeline. The next one is video track effects, which means you apply the plugins on the video track. The third one is media effects level, which means you embedded the plugins inside the media instead of putting it on the media. And the final one is video output effects level, which means you affect everything in the timeline. The first method is pretty much self-explanatory, as I just demonstrate how to add plugins on your video. So I will explain the second one, which is video track effects. So if you apply a certain plugins in that video track, any media that sits on that particular video track will get affected. For example, I want to apply this TV simulator on my entire video in the timeline. Instead of adding the plugins on each video, I can just simply add it on the video track. This will quickly affect all of the video in that particular video track with the same effects. So you can refer this as adjustment layer in other NLE. The third one is much more complex. Let's say you use a video stabilizer plugins onto your video. This particular plugin is required to analyze your clip in order to stabilize it properly. So if you apply this plugin on video event effects level, any adjustment you made on the clip, the video stabilizer plugin will need to reanalyze the whole clip. It is because it read the effects before it as part of the video. So what you can do, you can apply the plugin inside of the clip instead of the surface area of the media. So you can pretend that the video stabilizer plugin is baked in together in the media. So any adjustment you made on the clip won't destroy the analyzed data of the plugins. The last one is video output effects. So if you apply any plugins through this level, everything in the timeline from top to bottom will get affected by the plugins that you add. Some example plugin that you can use is the broadcast color plugins. So this plugin will make sure everything is in the broadcast safe zone. So instead of applying to video track or each media, just put it on the video output effects. Dragging and drop the plugins to preview window is the same thing as adding through video output effects. Now I'm going to show you guys how to do basic compositing in Vegas Pro. There is only one method of doing this inside Vegas Pro. Compositing is a basic technique in editing to composite different elements of media to make it look one piece. For example, I want to composite this light leak element in my edit between these cuts. I just simply place it above the cuts in my edit. Then what I can do, convert the video track of where the light leak is currently sitting to screen mode. To do this, just click the composite icon on the video track and choose the screen blending mode. This will blend the light leak clip together with the clip below it. You have various composite mode to choose from. It is not really necessary to only use screen composite mode to blend two different elements. You can also use it for creative purpose like making a fake glow with blur effects, or choose custom composite like a displacement plugin to read the media below the track to displace the video or image. Here in Vegas Pro, you can also make a composite child by clicking this button. This will convert the track becoming a child and track above it as parent. So this track can be considered as one merge layer. You can see the parent track got extra 2 buttons, which is parent track motion and parent composite mode. This means whatever adjustment you made on this parent track motion or parent composite mode, the child track will obey and follow. You can have multiple child in one single parent track or have sub-parent with child within parent track. The possibilities is endless. And the best part, you can apply any plugin effects on the parent track and affect the entire child with the same effects. But after adding the plugin to parent track, it won't straight away affect the child. It is because you need to convert the parent video track to adjustment layer. To do that, you simply click the parent track effects icon to load up the plugin chain. You'll see the composite change is at the front of the plugin. Simply swap it around to convert the parent video track to adjustment layer. Now the child will getting the same effects from the parent track. Let's move on to audio part. You can add plugins as well for audio here in Vegas Pro. It's very similar to video. Audio in Vegas Pro accept 3 effects level. The first one is on the media itself, which is the audio. Second, it's on the audio track, similar to video track. And finally, on a master track. For audio, there is no dedicated tab for audio plugin. Instead, you click the effects icon to add the plugin via the plugin chooser panel. This icon can be seen on the media itself, audio track and master track. You can add few audio plugin into the media and it will build a chain which is very similar to video effects chain. And as usual, the chain concept is similar to layer. Whatever on the first chain is the bottom section. So always plan out your edit. You might be wondering, if you can keyframe each individual control for a video plugin, can you do the same thing for audio? Yes, you can. For audio, we call it automate instead of keyframe. and automate can be only done if the plugin is add on audio track or master track. So you can't automate the audio plugin if it sits in the media. One important note, not all audio plugin can be automated. To make your life easier, a photo label automatable in a plugin chooser panel contains all of the plugins that can be automated. Once you add the plugin, you can see right beside the effects icon, the audio track will have a drop-down menu. Simply press on it and click automate. It will load up a plugin chain that currently sitting in the audio track and a list of things that can be automated for each plugins in the track. Just press the checkbox to automate and it will add the envelope to the audio track so you can start automating the plugin. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys how to affect multiple tracks simultaneously, and this is where you use audio bus tracks. Now to get into audio bus track, you have to get into the mixing consoles. So to get into mixing console, just go to your master track and click this icon and it will load up the mixing consoles. So the console will display all of the audio track in your timeline and it'll just simply reflect here. So if I highlight audio track number 2, it will basically reflect the track here in the timeline, 3, 4 and so on. So let's just say I want to affect track number 4 and 5 together with the same effects for a certain reason. All I have to do now is press insert bus and it will load up this bus track. Now if I click more, it will load up the next one and it will label A, B, C and so on. And you can just delete the track by simply right click and delete on the bus tracks. Now to link the audio track in the timeline to the bus tracks, simply click this button here, the output to bus track, existing bus track in the console. So I only have one, so I'm gonna link it to bus track A, and same goes to the track number 5. So whatever things I did on the bus tracks, it will affect these two tracks here. So let's say I add in effects like compressor, and it will just reflect here in the timeline like so. And if I reduce the amount of volume on the track, the bus tracks here, and it will of course reduce the volume for these two tracks. So this is how you can affect multiple things together in the audio bus tracks in Vegas Pro. So now I'm going to show you guys how to color correct and grade your video inside Vegas Pro. So to color correct and grade your video in Vegas Pro, make sure you highlight the video that you want to grade. So I already selected and highlight this video here in the timeline, and click this icon here in the timeline toolbars, and that will load up the color grading panels. And you do all of your color correction and grading in this one panel. And of course, it will load up the video scopes panel as well right beside your preview window. Now let's just say you don't see the video scopes, you can always add it back. So to add the video scopes, just go to view and then go to window and click video scopes, and it will load up the video scopes. And of course, you can always resize the panel so that you can see it better. Alright, so make sure when performing color correction and grading, you want to set your preview quality to the best and full, because you just want to color based on one reference frames. Alright, now before I get into the showing you guys how the color grading panel works, I'm just going to briefly explain what the video scopes really do and why you need to use this when performing correction and gradings. So the vector scope tells you the amount of colors in your video, and you don't want the colors to exceed beyond these boxes. So it tells you the colors in this video clip have this amount only, this white area. Basically there's not much of color because this video here was shot in log. So log footage usually doesn't have much of colors. Alright, so you don't want to add too much of saturation and exceed these boxes here. All right, the waveform tells you the exposures in your videos, which part of your video is bright or dark. So basically you can see the sun here on the preview window here. It's basically kind of clipping or blown out, or this is the most brightest part of the video, and I can tell that it's right over here, it's reflected here. This kind of ditch down area here is basically this person here, right? And it basically reflect back the video on the waveforms, which is the exposure. The histogram tells you the amount of contrast, all right, and then the RGB per rate tells you whether your video is white balance correct or not, or the color is too warm or too cold. You can see from the RGB parade here. So right now there's more red than green and blue. So basically this image here or this video is kind of warmed on the highlight area. So you want to actually kind of balance out this RGB parade so that the video look natural as what it's supposed to be. So this is really important for you guys to understand and fully masters, which is the video scope, before we can perform any color correction and grading. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys the color grading panel. So the way it works is actually from left to right. It's actually in order. So to make things easier, all of these panels that you see in this grading panel is actually the same effects that you would see in the video effects tab, which is under color. So imagine the color corrector, the color curve, the video levels, where is it, somewhere around here, all of them merge together into this one effect. So instead of drag and drop all of these effects to color correct and grade, you do all of that in this one grading panel, so you don't have to add this multiple times on your video. So you reduce the amount of chained in your video effects tab. So that's actually pretty neat. All right, so now let's start off with the first tab here on the grading panel on the far left. The input LUT is basically for you to apply a camera LUT. Okay, so let's say I'm shooting on S-Log3, so I'll apply S-Log3 to Rec. 709 LUT, so that will transform the log into a proper Rec. 709 viewing. That's much more technicality so right over there, but you understand the workflow for you to basically convert the log to a proper viewing. Now if you pay attention, there's another one, Look LUT here. This is basically your own stylized filters or lookup table. This is like the last input. You can apply like the sound encoder LUT or M31 LUT and then kind of control the intensity. This is more like a gamma or gamut transfer lookup table. All right, and then we have the color wheels, basically for you to perform color grading. Okay, so the lift controls the shadows, and then the gamma controls the midtones here, and then the gain controls the highlight areas, which is on the top. And then this slider here is basically control the exposures. Then you got the offset tools for you to offset the colors as well offset the exposure. And then the color channel is basically the same thing as the color wheel. It's just in this vertical way. This is more like a fine-tuned adjustment. So let's say on the gamma, I add a bit of red over here. On the color channel, it will reflect back here. You can see more red than green and blue. So this is more like a fine-tuned adjustment. If you don't want, you know, kind of eyeball based on the color wheel. And then we have the input and output. Basically, this is your video effects level, which controls the darkest point and the brightest point. And then we have the independent controls, which control the saturations. And then we have the exposure, which kind of it's actually logarithmic exposures, so you can see on the waveform how it's kind of bent when I control the exposure. It's kind of resembling your camera ISO controls there. And then of course we got the color curve for you to basically perform the same thing as what you see in the color wheel here. Okay, it's the same thing. This control the midtones, this control the brightest part of the image. Same goes with the color curve over here. Okay, and of course not only you can control the brightness, you can turn it off and then control the independent channel for the red, blues, and green as well. And then we have the HSL control, which control the hue, another saturation and luminance over here. Okay, and then we have again the LUT. And then on the far right, we have the finishing. You can bypass the color grading. You can add a Bezier mask effects right over here, which automatically add into the video event effects tab. You can move around the mask. And then you can add a broadcast color effects, which makes sure everything in the broadcast safe zone. You can even export a LUT after you perform a color correction or grade. From here, it will load up this window here for you to export the LUT. And of course you can pin or unpin the grading panel if you wish to and exit from the grading panel. All right, so let's get back into the grading panel and make sure you highlighted the proper videos. Okay, Now when I'm grading, I will always go to video effects tab, colors, and then expand my preview window so I can see it much more clearly. And of course, I'll go down a bit so I can see my media here, so I can just select them quickly, just right at top of my grading panel. So let's reset all of the grading. And the first thing I'm gonna do on the images, based from the image, I'll start off with the exposure. So another tips is, if you want to make a fine-tune adjustment, hold Control and use your mouse wheel. You can see how it do a very fine-tuned control there. So you want to make sure that when you perform color correction or grading, you don't want things to exceed 0 or hundreds. So whatever go beyond zeros, it's mean pure black, and whatever exceeding beyond 100, it's clipping. So you just want to stay within the lines, the borderline there. Okay, so just a tiny touch of shadows there and a bit of a gamma right over there. All right, and then once you're done, you can go to your input and output here. I'm gonna add a bit of saturation there to add a bit of a color because this is a log footage. Okay. Oh, let me reset my color curve here because I did not reset that. And a bit dark here. Okay, that's nice. Now, as you can see from my parade, it's too much of red here, so I can either offset it like so to balance it out, or I can use color curve, enable red channel. I kind of bring it down manually, specifically on that red channel. Okay, like kind of compensate it there and add a bit of blue. And this is all up to you. There's no right or wrong, but again, I just use offset because it's much more quicker for me to kind of correct the image. So once everything is correct, I can perform the grading by using the color wheel. Now, if you move it around with your mouse, it will make a really aggressive move. So again, hold Control, click and move it around. You can see how small the movement I made. So maybe I want to make the image a bit of warm there, and maybe add a bit of bluish on my midtones. Go back to my gain, and that's look pretty nice. And let's say you want to add more color effects, you can go to your video effects tab, color, and add a different color effect. So maybe this time I'm gonna add let's just say maybe this time color corrector secondary. Okay, this is really powerful effects or color effects because it actually adjusts color based on what you pick. Maybe I want to adjust the sky here, which is the orange area, show mask, and kind of fine tune my adjustment right over here. Make a bigger selection, not too much. Smooth it out. And then I can start coloring this section here, so it only affects that area. Now it depends how clean your image is as well. Alright, you can also get rid of it, close it. So let's say I just done color correct and grade this video clip. I can just click the next video clip and it will automatically update the color grading panel to the next video, so I can perform the next color correct and grade on the next video, and it will just straight away update the grading panel, and I can go back and forth and it will just update the grading panel, which is really nice. So that's how you do color correction and grade in Vegas Pro software. So now I'm finishing off the edits by adding effects onto the video, doing some color correction, grading, audio mixing, and so on. This is now purely on the creativity side, where you can now freely edit the whole project to get the finalized look that you're going for. Using the available tools inside Vegas Pro software, the online editing stage should be a lot more faster, as you can quickly go back and forth from adding effects or transforming the clips without distracting the base edit that you have made. This is what NLE software is supposed to do, which means you can perform editing in a chronological manner. So this is the finalized edit I've made on this project. I'm ready to export this project as the video format, which is the final delivery. The first step for you to start exporting the project into a video format, you need to highlight the entire in and out section of the edits. To do that quickly, just double click on the empty space of the timeline, and Vegas Pro is smart enough to select the whole in and out point of the project. To be sure and safe, just enable loop region so you can know this selected loop region will be rendered out as a video. Once done, you can click the Render As button right beside the Save button in Master Toolbars. It will load up the rendering box panel. In this rendering panel, you can pick tons of formats and pre-made templates. You can even customize the templates to fit your needs. I'm not going to explain every single formats and templates available in Vegas Pro, but I will show you these two types of formats I personally use a lot when exporting from Vegas Pro. The first one is Apple ProRes. If you are using the latest Vegas Pro 18 software, you should be able to export your video using ProRes codec. The main reason to export using this codec is to make sure the video will retain the most quality possible so that it can be edited again without losing so much of information. This is useful if you have a bunch of editors that work on different software. It's a friendly codec for your editing software to work with because it's not a compressed codec. However, exporting using ProRes will give you a huge file size, so keep that in mind. The second one is a distribution codec, which is the Magix AVC codec or Magix HEVC. Both formats are compressed codec and meant for World Wide Web delivery such as YouTube, Instagram, or etc. The difference between Magix AVC and HEVC is that AVC are the H.264 codecs, while HEVC is H.265 codec. HEVC is kinda new and it compresses your video a lot more than H.264 while maintaining the equal amount of quality. I usually pick Magix AVC codec because it doesn't compress too much so that the exported video still be able to do a rough re-export editing. HEVC on the other hand are kinda struggle to decode in video editing software in general. But honestly, there is not much of difference between these two codecs in my personal experience. It all boils down to your personal preference. Now for templates, there is tons of pre-made template to choose. I even have my own customized templates over here. Pick a template that has same settings with your project settings. In this case, the project setting for this video is 1080p 25 frames per second. So I'm gonna pick 1080p 25 fps template here. Pick based on your resolution and frame rates. These two figures need to be exactly the same from project settings all the way to rendering template. If you pay attention, there is duplicated template with NVENC label. This NVENC label means you will export the video using GPU processing, which will export your video faster, while the normal template uses CPU processing, which will be much more slower to export, but the quality will be better. But from my personal experience, using GPU to export video, the quality of the video is actually the same as CPU processing, so might as well use GPU to render out the video. One extra note, if you are using NVIDIA GPU, it will label NVENC. If you are using AMD GPU, it will label AMD VCE right beside the render templates. Let's say you want to customize the rendering template for a certain reason. Just highlight the template and press Customize. It will load up the Customize panel for you to tweak more of the rendering parameters. Now I'm not going to go full detail on this, but I will cover a few things of the parameters here in the rendering template. You can change the frame size, which is the resolution of the render. You can manually fit in the frame size value if, let's say, your project setting was set to vertical format, so you can swap the width and the height value. Then we have profile settings. This has something to do how much of hardware support to encode the video for rendering. You can pick between baseline, which is the lowest, main for average, and high for the highest hardware support. Honestly, I don't see any significant change in video quality and rendering time when choosing between these three settings, so I just leave it as it is. Then you can choose different frame rate. Again, choose the same exact frame rate that you set up in the project settings. The field order, you can pick between progressive or scan fields. Pick progressive scan if you are just uploading online platform. Then you can choose between constant bitrate or variable bitrate. A constant bitrate will render your video with a constant reading from the start till the end of the video, while variable bitrate will vary from time to time depending on the complexity of the frames, so that your file size will be much more smaller while maintaining the same video quality. You can enable 2-pass filter so that it will optimize to a smaller file size for VBR, but it will be 2 times longer when rendering. And of course, you can pick a certain value for the average and max bitrate reading. The higher the number, the bigger file size, and the more quality it will retain. Some part of the settings will gray out because of the NV encode is selected, which means the rendering will be done mostly by GPU. If you pick main concept, the rendering will be done by CPU and some settings will be enabled and some of it will be gray out. The preset has something to do how fast the computer will export the video. Picking high performance will export the video faster, while high quality will ensure the video is exported at the best quality possible based on the project settings. This will again affect the rendering time. IRC mode is basically your VBR or CBR selection, which will gray out or enable certain settings over here. You can click Audio tab to tweak the audio parameters. You can pick different sample rate or bit rate for the audio when rendering. The System tab is pretty much grayed out. That is because we are not editing any HDR content. And the last tab is the project settings, which allow you to tweak the video rendering quality, enable 2D stereoscopic, and tweak video color profiles. I usually leave it by default for these three tabs, which is the Audio tab, System tab, and Project tab. Once done, you can give it a name and press save if you like to use the same settings again next time when rendering. It will appear in the template sections. You can save the video to a specific place in your computer, but I usually press save to the project location so that the exported video will be saved right beside the project master file, so it's easier to find later on. You can give it a name, press render to start rendering the video. You will see the progress menu will load up and tells basic information like the rendering speed, proximity time, and etc. Once completed, Vegas Pro will automatically open a folder of where you exported the video in your computer. So here is it. Congratulations, you exported your first video with Vegas Pro software. Alright guys, so now I'm going to share with you guys a few tips and tricks that can improve your editing with Vegas Pro software. Right, so the first one here is GPU acceleration, and if I try to play the video here in the timeline, you can see how laggy the video is. It's unplayable, and I'm getting average around 2 to 3 frames per second, so I can't see the whole video. Okay, I can't play it in real time. So this is where you enable GPU acceleration in Vegas Pro, so that the video in the timeline will be decoded using your graphic cards. Now to do that, just go to Options, Preference, and under the Video tab, under the GPU acceleration or video processing, it will by default will be off, so you want to switch it on by picking your graphic cards. So I'm using RTX 2060 and it will display it here, and if you are using different brands or models of graphic cards, it will show up here. Okay, you select that, you select the graphic cards of your computer, and also make sure to allocate 0 MB for dynamic RAM preview. Now it may by default around 200 MB, and you want to put it all the way to 0. You want to enable between these two one at a time. So let's say if you want dynamic RAM preview, you allocate the amount of RAM preview that your computer have. So mine, I have like a total of 32 gigs of RAM, and I can allocate 28 gigs. Okay, but then I have to switch off my GPU. So you always want to make sure that you enable one of these at a time. So I just want to instant playback, so my dynamic RAM preview will be 0, and I pick my graphic cards here. So you press apply, and Vegas will tell you to basically restart the program. So let's restart it. Okay, once you restart the program, you should be able to get instant playback in real time. Alright, so the next one here is labeling the track. So I already labeled the track number 1 and 7 here. I put the track number 1 watermark and track number 7 base edit. So to give it a name, just highlight the track and just double click on the top section here, and you can give it a name. So maybe this one here is text, okay, and this one here overlays, and you can keep things organized, and so you know this track is what. And you can also change the color. So let's say this one here, I want to change the color, so just right click over here, track display color, and I pick let's say blue color, and it will change the whatever media in that particular track to this blue color code. And that's how you basically rename the track, as well as assign a color for that specific tracks. And this works for audio as well. Right, so that's how you again name a track. Alright guys, so now I'm going to show you guys how to group a bunch of tracks here in the Vegas Pro timeline. So let's say you have a stacking layer from top to bottom, and there's just so many layers in the timeline, and so you want to keep things minimized and organized. So let's just say this track 7 and 6 are pretty much the same thing, and you want to group them to a smaller layer. So what you can do, you can highlight both track here, and you just right click, track group, and group selected track. So this both track will be now merged into one smaller layer. Okay, and you can minimize it to collapse the track, and you can double click, give it a name. So I'm gonna give it a name in edit, and you can also solo the group or mute it if you want to. And if let's say whenever you want to edit that particular video media in this group, you just click this icon here to reveal the track, and you can start editing as usual. Once you're done, you can just collapse it and make it smaller, so it will shrink the timeline to smaller sizes so that it'll keep things organized. And you can also bring this let's say this audio track to that group, just bring it up here, and now it will group together with the audio. Okay, and you can do the same thing over here. Let's just group this 2 track over here, right click, track group selected track, and now we group this 2 track over here. Maybe this one you can label it text, and this is how you keep things organized and tidy in Vegas Pro software. Alright guys, so let's just say you import a media that have a different aspect ratio, and if for example this Vegas logo here, if I click on pen and crop, you can see the width and the height is in sort of a weird aspect ratio, and if I try to adjust it, you can see it will just cut off from the top here, and it's kind of impossible to adjust. So what you can do is just right click on it and match output aspect ratio. So when you adjust it, it will just adjust on the entire media, and this is really great if you're working with different aspect ratio. But usually that can be solved by just using picture-in-picture effects over here. It's the same thing, and I found it's much more quicker. Okay, again, there's no right or wrong, but this is one of the handy tips that you can use if let's just say your media comes in a different aspect ratio, so you can match output with aspect ratio. Alright guys, so now I'm going to show you guys how to see your edits before and after, okay, in the timeline. So let's say this is after you're adding some color and effects, and you want to see the before. You just hover your timeline over which frame you want to see the before, and you just click this button here on the preview window, which is the split screen view. You click that, and this is the before. Click that again, this is after. Same things over here, before or after. And if I go over here as well, you can click the before and after, and you can see what you have made on the video. Okay, and you can also click the drop down menu and click the left portion. You can see before and after, or the right portion here, before and after, or the entire thing before and after. Or you can use, if you hover your mouse over the preview, you can see this cross icon here. You can make a selection, and it will show you the before and after based on the selection you made. Pretty cool, huh? So, but I like mine to see all, so I can quickly see the before and after that I've made on the edits or on the media here in the timeline. So that's how you quickly see before and after in Vegas Pro software. Alright guys, so now I'm going to show you guys how to send the frames in the preview window or in the timeline, basically the edit that you have made, to a director or to someone that you are kind of collaborating remotely through your preferred communication apps. Okay, so for example, I want to send this particular frame to the director, how the color grade look like and all that kind of things. All you have to do is just copy the snapshot here, and it will exactly copy this frame, and just open the apps that you use to communicate. So in this case, Telegram. So I already opened Telegram. Just Control V to paste it and send it off. Okay, and you can do the same thing here. Let's just say this frame, but this time I want to send it the before, so I just disable it, the split screen view mode, copy snapshots and paste it. Simple as that. So that's how you basically send snapshots to someone else quickly here with Vegas Pro software. Alright guys, so now I'm going to show you guys how to enable grid in Vegas Pro so that you can use the grid as a guide for you to place a text or adjust your clip horizon. Okay, so to enable grid, just click this icon over here, overlays, and it will just enable the grid. So you can, let's just say, adjust this clip so that it will match with the horizon based on the grid here. Okay, or you can add a text. Let's add a text and nicely adjust the text to the grids here, where you can place it over here, and that's the quickest way for you to have a sort of a preview overlays on your preview window so that you can do more fine-tuned adjustment. And I've seen a lot of other NLE where you have to search for a grid effects and drag and drop it into the media and then adjust the grid, and that's take a lot of time. Here in Vegas, just one click you can enable grids so that you can perform fine-tune adjustment by referring on the grid over here. That's very handy, and that's what I like about Vegas Pro, because it has these useful grid overlays on the preview window. Right, so now I'm going to show you guys how to add a missing stream for your media. So for example, you already done the edits and you remove all of the audio for the video. And for example, this video here, originally there was an audio, but you remove it. But then suddenly halfway of the edits, you change your mind. You're like, I want to use the audio back here. Now instead of going to project media, find the video and then add it back to the timeline, what you can do, just highlight that particular media in the timeline and just right click and add a missing stream, and it will automatically add back the audio so you can use the audio again. And it can be done vice versa as well. So let me just for example add the audio for this clip over here. Right click, add a missing stream. Every time you add a missing stream, it will automatically create a new video track. Okay, let me unlink that, Control C, Control V over here. And you decided to use only the audio, but then suddenly again you want the visuals back. You can right click on the audio and add a missing stream event. It will automatically add back the visuals that came together with the audio. And this is one of the quickest way for you to add the missing stream in your timeline without going to project media and search for the video, locate the in and out point. That's a lot of you know, stuff and clicks to be done, and you can do that in just a click here in Vegas Pro. So now I'm going to show you guys how to match the generated media to the length that you have made for it. Okay, so for example, if I right click and insert a text media, this is a generated media. Okay, by default it will add to a 5-second long, and if I pull it out, it can be 10-second long. However, every 5 seconds it will loop, because by default it's a 5-second long. Okay, so if I try to pull all the way up, it's still a 5-second long no matter what. Okay, and if let's say I add a sort of animation to this text, okay, let's just go to the animation here, Title 2. You can see it's very fast and quick. So to change the length of the media based on the length that I have pulled, so let's just say I want it to be 7 seconds long. Okay, let's just click this icon here and it will load up the video media generators or the generated media itself. You can see this icon here, match event line. So when I click that, it automatically conform the duration to the length of the media that you have pulled. So now by default it's a 7 second 3 frames long. So if I play, it becomes slower, the animation becomes slower. And if I pull more, it will loop every 7 seconds based on the original one. So if I click this again, it will match based on the length of the media. Now it's a 10-second long, and if I play, the animation becomes slower. Now if I make it shorter, it's still 10-second long despite the length. Now it's already 4 seconds. If I click match, now it's a 4-second long. It becomes faster, the animation now becomes faster, but if I pull it, it will loop every 4 seconds. This is one of the quickest way for you to match the event length by just clicking this icon here. It's only available on the generated media. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys how to rotate a video in Vegas Pro. So here I have a vertical project, a vertical format. It's 1080 by 1920, so it's 9 by 60. And I also recorded this video here in vertical aspect ratio. You can see it's vertical. but it was saved in horizontal format, which is 16:9, so I have to rotate it. So rotating the video, you might be thinking using pan and crop. Now if I do that, you can see it will just crop the top and bottom, okay? Or use track motion. I can rotate it the entire media, and I have to rescale it, and once again it will affect everything in the timeline. So the efficient way to rotate a video here in Vegas Pro is just to right click on the media in the timeline, properties, go to media, and under the rotation, and just rotate it clockwise depending on your video. So I shot mine in such way, so I have to rotate it clockwise, press OK, and it will rotate it from the media level. And this is one of the efficient and quickest way and a proper way to rotate a video in Vegas Pro software. Now before I end this tutorial, I highly recommend you guys to check out my other Vegas Pro tutorial, because my other Vegas Pro tutorials, I basically cover like how to motion track, how to nest a video, how to export a vertical video, all that kind of thing I already covered on others video here in this channel. So if you want to learn more about Vegas Pro on specific topics, please check out my others Vegas Pro tutorials in this channel. So we're finally at the end of the video, and I hope you guys learned something with this tutorial, and I hope you guys are able to start cycling on your own, creating amazing videos using the Vegas Pro software. And of course, if you have any questions related, you can leave it down in the comment section, and I'll try my best to help you guys out there. So thanks for watching. Till next time, stay safe and have a great day. Bye bye.